So
He did also question the idea of the chase being any longer than 10 minutes. No collision, nobody arrested, nobody injured.
no. Well, I'm also not sure how you can get up to such speeds in New York City, where the traffic is pretty much bumper to bumper stationary most of the time. But joining us for more on this is royal commentator Michael Cole. Good morning, Michael.
Good morning, Beverly. Good morning, Andrew.
Morning.
Of course, this evokes memories of the terrible events in the early hours of the 31st of August 1997, something which is with me always and always will be. But on this occasion, and I said on this very channel yesterday, that the vital witness in all of this, the key witness, the one I would believe above everybody else, would be the taxi driver. And when the taxi driver was found, and you've shown him, but I think it's worth reading a quote from him. Sukhchan Singh, known to his buddies in New York as Sonny, he said, "I don't think I would call it a chase. I never felt I was in danger. It wasn't like a car chase in a movie. They were quiet and seemed scared, but it's New York. It's safe." And I think we can also place confidence in the words of His Honor the Mayor, Eric Adams, who incidentally is a former New York policeman. He said that the circumstances were challenging, but obviously there's a great gulf between challenging and nearly catastrophic. And as Beverly just said, they arrived at their destination safely, unlike the terrible events in Paris when Dodi was killed outright. Henri Paul never took another breath, and Diana died in those terrible, terrible circumstances. It took 101 minutes to get her to hospital, and she died a terrible death. But before that, of course, the paparazzi who'd pursued her were taking pictures of her with their motor drives going. And as her brother, Lord Spencer, said in his funeral eulogy, Diana, the huntress of classical mythology, became Diana the Hunted. I condemn absolutely this chase, but let's put this thing in proportion and see what it is. And fortunately, there were two police officers who were witnesses, men who are obviously used to giving statements, giving evidence, and I'd like to read their reports. Incidentally, I was in New York. I've been to America more than 50 times, I think, but I was in New York the night the New York Police Department made a record number of arrests. It was 4,500. That was the night of the animals in July 1977. Huge power blackout and a lot of looting went on. Now, NYPD, they don't mess about. Had there been behavior like this, a 2-hour car chase up and down the avenues and boulevards and streets of New York, arrests would have been made. And the former cop, who is the mayor, said no arrests, nothing to see here, more or less.
And Michael, a police car actually accompanied Harry's official. There were two cars in Harry's group, and a police car accompanied him the whole time. So they had a bird's eye view the whole time, which is why the mayor is able to say with great authority, sure, it was challenging, but nothing like as described by Harry's official spokesman.
Yeah. And Andrew, the irony of all this is one of the reasons they gave for scooting first to Canada and then to California, their hilltop fortress there. They were complaining about immediate intrusion in this country, and particularly from the continental paparazzi. Well, you know, this has happened in New York, usually a very, very safe city. And of course, in America, the restrictions on the press are far, far lighter than they are in this country. They're protected by the First Amendment to the Constitution, and they can do more or less anything. Now, I condemn absolutely a chase. They had arrived at this award ceremony to be admired and to be filmed, and they left to be admired and filmed. But they didn't want to be photographed. They shouldn't have been pursued in the way they are. I've written a piece in the June edition of the British Journalism Review, and I referred to these paparazzi people as thugs with cameras. And essentially, that's what it is. They're in pursuit of the people they're trying to photograph, but they're in pursuit of money. And there's no excuse of it. And during the time that I was on the road correspondent, royal correspondent, I would hear these paparazzi say, I just hit Diana, I done Diana. I mean, there was an element of horrible, overt sexuality in it all. It's disgraceful. It's to be condemned. But let's call things as they really are, because nobody wishes to be accused of crying wolf here. We need the facts. That's what I said yesterday on this channel.
How did we know about this story in the first place? Was this a statement from Harry?
It was.
Yes, it was. Yes, it was. I mean, the thing is, the point was made, they got in touch with the media before they got in touch with the police department. I mean,
just tells you everything you need to know about this story. And the fact that they chose to describe what sounds like a slightly stressful event in which they tried to get away from some photographers, to describe it as a near catastrophic car chase. He is just cashing in again, but this time on the worst thing possible, which is his mother's death.
Yeah, well, cab drivers are often the font of all wisdom. I think we know that. And I think we can place great confidence in what the mayor said. He's a streetwise guy, former policeman. I mean, let us really examine it, because it's in nobody's interest to make claims of this kind. Fortunately, nobody was hurt. They got to their destination. That's good. We like to know that, because the alternative is quite horrible and quite terrible, and something I will never forget, and most people will never forget. But we need to know the full truth of it. Fortunately, this channel, I was proud to be on it yesterday, because it pursued every single line as they came up, and in a period of 2 hours, the story changed, because you and I know, you know, Andrew, you know, Beverly, covering a big story, the initial reports change very, very rapidly as the further reports come in, and completely change it in some instances. That happens all the time, and maybe that's happened here. So I think we want more information, and I think honest inquiry is required.
Michael, I'll just make this one point. Of course, as you make the point, they went to America for their privacy, which they regularly invade, by the way, with their Netflix documentaries and Oprah interviews. But this chase could not have happened in Britain for the very simple reason there is a very serious code, the Independent Press Standards Organisation Code, and it says journalists must not engage in intimidation, harassment or persistent pursuit, which is... and there's none of those rules or guidelines in the United States. Harry was warned about that. It's the equivalent of the Wild West.
Absolutely. And, of course, those new rules and regulations were tightened up. There was a new press regulation, a body set up to do it after the terrible, tragic death of Diana and Dodi and Henri Paul. And yes, that's right. And it is absolutely true what you've said. It's regrettable. I mean, I feel sorry for Prince Harry in many ways. From a child, it's quite clear, and it's undeniably clear, that he absolutely hates the media and all it stands for. And I saw that even when he was as young as 3, throwing stones at the reporters and putting his tongue out. And that's now manifested itself in this way. I do feel sorry for him. It's a primal thing. Any man or any woman wants to protect their family, wants to protect those closest to them, thinks it's their responsibility so to do. But they were in a very safe place. New York is one of the best police places on earth. Unlike our own police in the Metropolitan Police, they actually enforce the law there, particularly traffic regulations. And had they been using, or the paparazzi been pursuing something like a Formula One race or a Dodgem Derby up and down the streets of New York, they would have all been collared without any doubt, and they'd have been in the magistrate's court this morning.